I'm Chris.
And I'm Matt.
Welcome to Roleplay Shop.
And this episode is our...
Behind the GM screen.
He's got it. That's it.
For our last episode, Blood Betrayal, which we don't have a title. No, actually, we should get a title.
We should have a title. 1 second.
The Will of a Master. We have a title now. It's called The Will of the Master.
So this is, like we were saying, the behind the GM screen, where we dissect the episode previously. So we'll link that up here. It's a campaign diary for our Blood and Betrayal campaign.
It's episode 6, if I remember correctly. This was a one-on-one game, which it was the first, and I believe the only one in this campaign, actually.
It was my first as a player. I've never had the opportunity, I guess you could say, to play by myself, have a game master just for me. And honestly, I could sense the excitement oozing off of Chris. He was so excited to do this with me. Me not so much.
Yeah, I remember it was a Wednesday. I don't know why I remember it was a Wednesday, but it was. And it was like during the week, I'm like, you know what, let's not do a 6-hour thing. Let's just we'll meet, we'll play 3 hours. Mm-hmm. And I could feel that you were like, I feel like for me, at that point, one-on-one is like, it's not really the part I like, because I like the communal, like talking with the other people. So I was like, I'm going to convince Matteo, I'm going to convince Matt that this is fun.
Yeah. And granted, it was. But so we have some questions that we've prepared for each other to kind of dig a little bit deeper and to focus in our conversation. Do you want to start us off, Chris?
Well, sure, because we kind of touched on it a little bit. But I was wondering, how did it change your opinion at all from the beginning? Like, playing that game, did it change your opinion on one-on-one? I must say that you don't have to say yes, because I don't necessarily feel like it has. I feel like you probably have evolved since, but did that game change some of your expectations? Or
I'm going to say the boring answer, and I'm going to say it didn't. Not through any fault of yours, but I kind of went into it with an expectation that this game is going to be interesting, because I love role-playing games. But the part of a role-playing game that I like the most, especially as a player, exclusively as a player, I guess, is that banter and the feeding off of the other players. Like, you kind of, if you have a really good synergy with the other people at your gaming table, you can come up with really cool stuff. And the most memorable moments of most of the games I've ever had the chance to play in or game master for, they're always the things that the players, or not always, but very rarely is it not instigated by creativity that all the players kind of give each other. This game for me, when we were playing just the two of us, and maybe that's because I was going into it with the wrong mindset, but it felt like story time almost.
And it was kind of built that way. Yeah, for sure. And it's not, I don't think that's fixed by being a one-on-one. And that might be I think for me, the reason I kind of built it that way was because it was a weekday, and I felt your heart was maybe not into it that much. So I kind of wanted to control a little bit of where the story was going, and the fact that it was not the main quest. I didn't want it to go on a tangent and you want to go another city, or I didn't want it to be sandboxy, because it had to go back. So it was almost like a side quest that was centered around your character, but it was still very railroady.
Does that linearity have anything to do with the fact that I missed a game? Because you kind of came to me saying, hey, you weren't here for this game, why don't we do this one-on-one?
Yeah, it was, you know what, I think it was not necessarily because you missed a game, because let's say you hadn't missed a game.
Yeah. I
would have liked to run that one-on-one anyway.
Okay.
It's just, it was cool in terms of timeline to actually do this. It gave me the time in the story to have you go through it. But it was, for me, it was more about, I needed your character to be able to use his power because you've been holding back.
Yeah.
And the reason we established together at the beginning was the fact that you were an apprentice, you left in a hurry, and technically nobody allowed you to use your magic without being supervised by your master.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of wanted to give you that actual license of using magic. And for that, you needed to become a journeyman.
Okay.
And for that, you needed to go through that ceremony. And for that, you needed to have a test. So that was my idea. I was like, okay, he needs to do a test, ceremony, then he's going to be good.
Yeah.
And in order to check those boxes, I kind of had to make it linear. Otherwise, it would have needed multiple games, potentially.
Yeah, and it would have been hard to control. And
so it was almost like horseshoeing this idea into it. And to be honest, probably if you were like, you know what, let's not play that game, I would have told you, or at least like,
had it just happen.
It had just happened. You did that. It would have given you a description, maybe with a little bit of your input, but not necessarily taking the time to play through it. Half an hour of you, almost like a You're Your Own Hero book kind of deal, where it's like both path, which spell you're choosing or whatever. Mm-hmm. But you know what I mean? It would have happened anyway because I was at this point in the story. So that's probably why it felt so railroad and linear. Well,
I mean, I'm given the two options. I'm glad I got the chance to live it, like actually be there and make the decisions, and it definitely gave me the opportunity to kind of meddle with the magic, like my spells before being with everybody. Like it could have been clumsy for me to be there in combat with the rats, and I wouldn't have known how to use my magic. Like it would have really slowed everything down. So I guess on a technical point, it was definitely really cool to have me there.
Yeah, actually learn, like you, Matt, learning how to use the spells of Diedrich. Yeah. And we'll have a whole roleplay chat on one-on-one games, so we won't go into details of how and whatever. But yeah, that's definitely one of the strong points of having those kind of one-on-one. Mm-hmm. But just to maybe tie that discussion, that part of the discussion, if I had to run where we are at in the story, if I had to run a one-on-one with you, I think it'd be a great spot actually, because you're
like right now,
like right now in the story, like I mean, like multiple blood and betrayals after, because like we said in the past, we're like a year and a half in the past of our actual campaign. I won't go into details of where you're at right now, but it's kind of open. If we run a game just with you, I would love to give you the opportunity to have a really open sandbox and go through what Diedrich is doing on his own. And it would be a total different feel. So that's why it's having a one-on-one. It's not necessarily railroady or sandboxy. It really depends on what you're doing with it, right?
I don't like... Are you asking me what I want to do, like right now? Like, you want me to answer that?
Oh no, I wasn't. But if you want to answer, you can. No, I was just saying, like, if we were this, if we decided to run a game right now of one-on-one and where we're at in the story, it would be totally different. That's all. That's all I meant to say.
Okay, cool. I'd like to talk to you about that other thing maybe later. But
yeah.
So I have a question, I guess, prepared for you, and you kind of just maybe answered it, but. I was wondering, did you have an expectation for me to interact with the people that you had set out in this one-on-one a little bit more? Because now that I'm like reliving it, there were people presented to me, like, I didn't really interact with Jenna very much. She was much higher than me, so maybe that would have been odd. But like that other wizard who was also becoming a journeyman, I didn't really, like I said, hey, how you doing? Boom, that's it. Like I didn't probe him for more. I didn't really talk to anybody around. Maybe that was because I was feeling like a little bit introverted that particular day, and I don't know. But like, were you expecting me to talk to these people more and like build relationships with them?
Not necessarily, to be honest. I kind of wanted, for me, having NPCs is, there's a function to NPCs, but one of the thing is also just, if you're in the world, there's going to be people. You go to the bus stop, there might be someone there. You might chat, you might not. Yeah. But there's someone there. So for me, if you have no one to interact with, because as a game master I don't have use for it, it's not realistic, or it it breaks the verisimilitude. So I have to put people, even though most of the time, and to be honest, that happens in general. I put people just to put people, and then maybe they become relevant, and maybe you interact with them, and maybe they become interesting. Yeah. So did I expect you to interact with them more? Not really. Did I put them there not because they have a big ulterior motive, just because there needs to be people. It makes sense that you're not the only one graduating. Just because I felt like it made sense. So, no, but I remember you being, like you said, a bit like introverted. That's a good way to say it that day. And it was, you're right, more about like me showing you your world.
Yeah.
Like getting to the door and the door opens. I remember, well, in my head, I remember you, Matthew, being like, oh, that's weird. But Diedrich doesn't find it weird. Yeah. Right. So it was more about breaking the bridge, or like, how do you say that?
Like kind of connecting these things.
Connecting
like,
you and Diedrich.
I ought to know already.
Yeah, exactly. So in the test, we kind of went through a bit fast, but in the test, I actually asked you questions, and not to test you, but like I gave you information that basic magic users should know. So if I asked you what are the 8 colors of magic, obviously Matt did not know, but Diedrich did. So then I would tell you, but in game. So it was a way for me as a game master to show you the lore at a spot where Diedrich could actually show you the lore. And you don't have to remember that, but maybe later you'll be like, oh, I guess there was like multiple magic, right? There's 8. Oh yeah, okay. And then like, so it was more about showing you what Diedrich knows and doesn't, and what can you expect in this magical realm that you come from. And that's why it was very showcasey, like me showing you.
Very story.
Yeah.
Story time.
Like it was a great way to do exposition just to you. Because I didn't want the other ones, because I want the other ones to find it mysterious and everything. And I want to give you that exposition so that you are like, you feel like you have something over them in terms of this that magic knowledge. Yeah. Cool. So I think do you feel like I've managed that?
I feel like you achieved it.
Maybe like, again, if I had 3 sessions, spread it out more with more of your own agenda through it, it would have been less railroady. How did you feel about this letter that was given back to you that was like a message from your master? Because this is the first time you interacted with anything regarding your master.
I mean, I can't say I expected it. It was cool to have a puzzle that was a little bit more long-term. So all in all, that was a really neat game for us to play. It, like I said, it was my first experience as a player in a one-on-one game. And despite my original reaction, it was still a pleasant experience for me. I also really got the opportunity here to use Diedrich's powers for the first time. It was really cool to use like time rewinding and premonitions and actually hunkering down and doing a full-fledged ritual to kind of bring my character back in to where the rest of the party was in the sewers. So that, to me, was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and for me, it's the same. Even though we were maybe on the same page on the kind of coming in, I had lots of fun doing it. It was more railroady than I usually like to run a game, but it allowed me to bring the story forward, and that's always what I try to do. Like, what's best for the story? In this case, it was to railroad a little bit, but it was one character. If other character would have been there, it would have been long for them to just go through your story alone. So it was a good way to do it, and I'm happy we did it.
Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed our brief discussion about what was going on behind the GM screen. If you have any questions about this episode, feel free to reach out to us. You can contact us on Twitter. That's roll_play_chat.
We have an email, that's contactroleplaychat@gmail.com. But if you have comments specifically for this episode, just write in the comments below and we'll be happy to answer.
Please smash that like button, send any comments you have down below, and subscribe to the channel. For all those of you in podcast land, audio land, I hope you're enjoying as well. If you are, we'd really appreciate you giving us a 5-star rating review on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever podcasting platform you're using. And I think that's everything we have to say for today, Chris.
That's all, Matt.
Let's call it a chat.